All right, so who is the first witness in the case that we're discussing? And this is New Jersey versus Monell. This is the case that we've been covering live, but they are not in court today. We expect that they will resume Tuesday of next week. So in the meantime, we're going to let you hear testimony from the first witness. And this was law enforcement who responded to the scene. It's Sergeant DeHart, New Jersey State Police. Let's see what he had to say about the scene when he arrived.
What's depicted in S75?
S75 is that main entrance with the doorway open.
Okay. And what's depicted in S76?
S76, immediately you see what appears to be the body covered by the blanket.
And after that, S77?
S77 is off to the right, that L sectional that I described, brown silver.
Can you see any of the trees you described in there as well?
Yes, you can.
Sergeant, after you made those observations, the room that's, if you're looking at the house, to the left, you described as the kitchen?
Sir.
With seat. And I believe you already described your observations of that room. Did you see anything specifically of note when you made your observations?
Again, I noticed the table as well as a curtain that was hanging. I saw the refrigerator and just the other items in the kitchen itself.
Did you actually go into the kitchen?
I did not.
Were you later made aware of certain biological items that was located in the kitchen?
I was.
So Detective DeHart is talking about the actual home in which the body was found and where the estranged wife had been living with Mr. Monell. My understanding, he was not living there at the time that this event happened. So let me bring you back in, Matt, and ask you, what is the importance or relevance of the detective describing the actual physical structure of the home, where the doors are, the curtain, the table? What is, from your perspective, why is that important?
Well, you want to paint a vivid picture for the jury. So you want the jurors to understand, what the surroundings look like, where the body was found in this particular instance. And then you also want the opportunity to submit certain photographs, whether they depict the victim herself or the surroundings, so that the jury has a feel for exactly where this crime occurred.
And so, to me, it's just interesting. It was this person that testified first. Do you think that it makes sense for a jury if they bring it from the outside in, meaning they start with the outside of the structure, the inside of the structure, and work their way towards the actual body and crime scene?
Well, I think that's a matter of strategy with regard to the prosecution, and what do they feel more comfortable doing? How have they done this in the past? I mean, if you have a process that works for you, that has worked in other homicide prosecutions, you're going to continue to use that same style, that same sort of strategy or tactic every time you try a case.
All right, so we're going to listen to some more law enforcement testimony. Next is Detective Crane, who testified as to his investigation. Let's see what he has to tell us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a photograph that I took of one of the entrance doors to the residence.
Okay, looking at that right now, do you know which entrance door that was?
I have to look at the overall photograph, sir.
Yes, you look at S63, if you can identify the photograph, or identify which door is in.
Yes, sir. If I was looking at the front of the residence, it would be an entrance door to the left-hand side, my left, as I face the residence.
And again, is that you actually took that photograph?
Yes, sir.
And that's an accurate representation of the condition of the door on the date that you took that photograph?
Yes, sir.
Judge, I would ask that S73 be entered as evidence.
Objections?
No.
Yeah.
Now, S74 was already entered as evidence. Which doorway is that?
As it would be, as if I were facing the residence, the doorway to the right, entrance door to the right. I observed multiple blood stains on various regions of her body and multiple lacerating stab wounds to the neck, chest area.
I'm going to show you S82, which has been entered as evidence. Do you recognize what's depicted in S82?
Yes, sir.
And what is in S82?
That is victim Tara O'Shea.
And is that an accurate representation of the condition of Ms. O'Shea once the body would have been removed?
Yes, sir.
And are you the individual that actually took this photograph?
Yes, sir.
Upon completing your walkthrough
Well, Matt, it's almost like you do this for a living, because you predicted exactly what they've now done, which is they are now using pictures to say, this is what I found. These are the multiple wounds to the victim. This was her position. And a picture's worth 1,000 words. And so now talk to us about rules of evidence. Will the jury get to see those pictures of the victim that this detective is describing?
Well, that's always a tricky aspect of a trial, and normally it's handled before trial through motions in limine, where the court can make decisions about admitting and not admitting certain evidence. You know, what the court has to determine here is these photographs, if they're graphic, which they certainly would be, does the probative value, the value to this case, outweigh the prejudice to the defendant with regard to these photographs? So I would assume that analysis has already been done, that decision has already been made by the court, and that's why these photographs are being presented in open court at this point.
And so once they're introduced into evidence, is it correct that they then the attorney has to ask to publish to the jury to then be able to show the pictures to the jury? Is that right in terms of the evidence requirements?
Well, I guess it would depend on the rules of evidence in a specific state. Most follow the general rules of evidence of the federal system. But once those photographs have been admitted into evidence, they're going to be available to the jury to review.
All right. Well, thank you for your analysis. One thing that we don't know yet, and we'll find out, we're going to stay tuned, is whether or not the 12-year-old is going to testify. Certainly, I would think that he would, and he will, unless there's some hearsay exception or exception that prosecution can say, nope, we need to go ahead and not have him testify. We'll use a prior statement. So we're going to continue that trial next week. Please return after this brief break, and we'll talk about 2019. Welcome back to Law and Crime. I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott. So what else can we expect to see in 2019 in terms of trials nationwide that Law and Crime will be covering first here live? Let's watch.
I'm Anthony Velez, and here are the top upcoming trials of 2019. The quadruple homicide trial of Charles Chase Merritt, the man accused of fatally beating a business associate, his wife, and their 2 preschool children, is set to begin on January 7th, 2019. The 61-year-old suspect is facing charges in connection to the disappearance of business associate Joseph McStay, his wife, Summer, and their young sons, 4-year-old Gianni and 3-year-old Joey Jr., from their home in Fallbrook in 2010. The family's remains were discovered in the Mojave Desert in 2013, and Merritt was arrested in 2014. Merritt represented himself for a short period, but later sought legal assistance. Merritt now faces the death penalty if convicted. The trial of the retired Tampa police captain who claims he fatally shot another man in self-defense during a dispute at a movie theater is scheduled to begin on February 25, 2019. 75-year-old Curtis Reeves reportedly fatally shot Chad Olson inside the Cobb Grove 16 after the 2 men argued over Olson's use of a cell phone during previews. Olson allegedly approached Reeves and threw a bag of popcorn at him before Reeves drew his gun and fatally shot Olson. Reeves tried to claim a stand-your-ground defense, but a judge rejected the defense argument, and that decision was upheld on appeal. His defense team will reportedly argue self-defense at trial. Reeves is now facing a second-degree murder charge. The trial of the Georgia man accused of killing an 11th grade history teacher in Ocilla is set to begin in April 2019. The defendant, Ryan Duke, was arrested in 2017 in connection with Tara Grinstead's 2005 disappearance and death. Duke and another man, Bo Dukes, reportedly told friends at a party a month after Grinstead's disappearance that they killed Grinstead and burned her body. Duke now faces multiple charges, including felony murder. Bo Dukes faces charges of concealing a death, tampering with evidence, and hindering the apprehension or punishment of a criminal. A man accused of killing his pregnant ex-girlfriend and a police officer who tried to arrest him in Florida will stand trial in May. Marquis Floyd is accused of fatally shooting his ex-girlfriend, Sade Dixon, on December 10, 2016, before shooting Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton when she tried to arrest him in January 2017. Lloyd reportedly lost the use of one of his eyes while being apprehended by authorities, claiming he suffered an unprovoked police attack. Lloyd now faces the death penalty. The trial of Pan Hupp, the woman accused of killing a mentally disabled man in Missouri to cover up another murder in 2011, is set to begin in June. Prosecutors claim Hupp fatally shot 33-year-old Louis Gumpenberger to divert attention for the murder of Betsy Faria, whose husband, Russ Faria, she framed for the killing in 2011. Hupp was the star witness in Faria's first murder trial, resulting in a guilty verdict. Faria was later acquitted during a second trial. Hupp now faces a charge of first-degree murder for Gumpenberger's killing. The two suspects, accused of killing a Florida State law professor in a murder-for-hire plot in 2014, will face a jury in June 2019. The suspects, Sigfredo Garcia and Catherine Magbanua, reportedly hired a hitman, Luis Rivera, who allegedly drove from Miami to Tallahassee and fatally shot Dan Markle. Rivera took a plea deal to a lesser charge of second-degree murder in exchange for his testimony against Garcia and Magbanua. Investigators believe the suspects were hired by Markle's ex-wife's family to kill Markle over a custody dispute, but no family members have been charged. The suspects now face charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation of murder. The ex-wife of NBA star Lorenzo Wright is set to stand trial for his murder in November 2019. Shira Wright and her cousin, Billy Turner, are accused of conspiring to kill Wright in 2010 when Wright's body was found with multiple gunshot wounds in Tennessee. The pair allegedly had a co-conspirator, Wright's cousin, convicted killer Jimmy Martin, who allegedly assisted with the cleanup of the crime scene. Martin turned state's witness, leading investigators to the murder weapon, which was tossed in a lake in Walnut, Michigan. Wright now faces a charge of first-degree murder, but won't face the death penalty if convicted. I'm Anthony Velez for Law and Crime, and those were the top upcoming trials of 2019.
Well, no doubt about it. Each of those trials will be unique, and I stand by. I believe in our justice system, but we never know what's going to happen in court or what a jury's going to do. So it's important that you stay tuned in 2019 and watch those trials live here on Law and Crime. Now, one last topic I'd like to cover with Matt Mangino while I have him before I sign off at 3 o'clock today. That is Kevin Spacey. Yes, Kevin Spacey, the actor. Most have probably heard that he has been charged, and this is arraignment is coming up. He's been charged with 1 count of indecent assault and battery of a person 14 or older, and this is a charge that was broadcasted media. Everybody's heard about, read about. Well, he made a request that he be excused from arraignment. An arraignment is expected on Monday. The judge denied that request, so we do expect that he will be at his arraignment on Monday in court, and we will be covering that. Let me ask you, Matt Mangino, so here's my question for you. You know, for a defendant to ask not to be present at arraignment, I don't typically see that or hear that. What's your experience?
You're not going to be excused, and it's normally not asked for. It's the first process or the first step in this process in terms of prosecution. You know, the court typically will tell you what the charges are against you and set a bond. The court expects you to be there. You know, they may set a bond and expect you to post that bond. You know, some people aren't in a position to do that, and they end up in jail. I don't think that's going to be the case with Kevin Spacey, but it's not unusual for a judge to demand you to appear at your arraignment.
And so what do you think of the argument, just quickly, about, well, I'm a public figure, the media scrutiny, it's going to be a circus, bottom line, and so I shouldn't have to be there in person. What do you think of that legal argument?
Well, there's already been a great deal of publicity here to suggest that somehow appearing in person at your arraignment is going to prejudice you in the eyes of the public. I think is a stretch. You know, he doesn't want to come to Massachusetts to be arraigned. That's the simple fact of it. And the judge says, hey, you've been charged. We arraign people in person. And that's what's going to happen in your case.
Right. And so the good news is, just because you have fame or wealth or fortune doesn't mean that you're going to be treated any differently, which was the judge's decision in this case. There you see Kevin Spacey when he was acting his role that he had in House of Cards and making some statements that I think a lot have probably viewed on YouTube. So I am going to be leaving you, but you want to stay tuned. Our own Rachel Stockton will be joining as host. Please stay tuned, covering trials here on Law and Crime after this short break.